Here we go. Humanities 101 and NACHOS reminds you that you are enough. Now we join Dr. Dutch with the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support.
Welcome back, Nacho Knots. If you are new here, especially if you're one of my students coming back from winter break, let me explain what the heck a Nacho Knot is. I call y'all Nacho Knots because this space is not just a class and it's not just a podcast. It's a little mission. We're exploring what it means to be human, how to build a life with more predictability, balance, and joy, and how to stay kind in a world that can be loud and harsh. So if you're listening, watching, thinking along, and showing up for that journey, you're part of the crew. You are a Nacho Knot. And I want you to hear this right away. I am glad that you're here. Not glad that you're productive, not glad that you're caught up, not glad that you're already on your A game. I am simply glad that you are here. If your brain feels a little foggy, a little tender, or a little out of rhythm today, that doesn't mean you did winter break wrong. It means you're human. Coming back is a transition, and transitions take energy. And for a lot of neurodivergent folks, the return can feel like your nervous system is stepping from one climate into another without a coat. Winter break matters, mostly because breaks are not a luxury. They're part of how learning stays sustainable. That's why we build them into the system. They're how your body catches up with what your mind has always been carrying. They are how you remember that you are not a machine that exists only to produce. Respite is not laziness. Respite is maintenance. Respite is care. So before we talk about syllabi, assignments, deadlines, or goals, I want to start with a gentler question. Did you get any kind of respite at all this break? Even a little, even in small, imperfect ways. Because rest is not only sleep. Rest can be quiet. It can be distance. It can be saying no without having to explain yourself. Rest can be letting your shoulders drop for 10 seconds and realizing that in this moment, you are safe enough to exhale. And if your break was not restful, or it was messy, or it was held more heaviness than relief, I want to offer you a line so that you can come back. Because when days feel long and seasons feel dark, I have to fall back on the message of Gandalf. Darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. This quote shows up in different places, in different forms, and people pass it hand to hand because it names something we recognize. It sounds like Tolkien wisdom filtered through the campfire voice of someone who has walked through darkness and is not pretending it was easy. And that's exactly why it belongs here in Nachos. Because one of our core themes here is that struggle does not cancel your worth. A hard season is not proof that you failed. A heavy break is not evidence that you're doing life wrong. Sometimes darkness is not dramatic. Sometimes it's burnout. Sometimes it is grief. Sometimes it's the quiet dread of returning to a routine that did not fit you the last time you wore it. Nachos exists to say out loud and without shame that these experiences are real and that you are still a whole person inside of those experiences. Another Nachos theme is that self-care exists without self-punishment. A lot of people try to quote unquote fix their life by getting harsher with themselves. They come back from break or after the start of the year and immediately start swinging a hammer at their own nervous system. More pressure, more rules, less grace. But the quote points towards a different kind of strength. Darkness must pass does not mean you must force it to pass by crushing yourself. It means that seasons move, bodies recover, brains re-regulate with time, with support, with small stabilizing choices. The light returns, not because you bullied yourself into it, but because you kept going with care. And that last line, when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer, fits our neuro-affirming lens so well. NACHOS is not about pretending everything is fine. It's about learning how to move through hard things without losing yourself. Clarity does not always come from speed. It often comes from honesty, from rest, from making room for the truth of what you carry. For many of us, especially those of us who are neurodivergent, the clearer sun is what happens when we stop masking our needs and start designing our lives with more predictability, more balance, and more joy. So let's take that Gandalf line and bring it right into the very practical reality of January, the beginning of the semester. Because this is the moment when everything speeds up. New classes, new expectations, new routines, new sensory environments, new social dynamics, new pressures to, quote, hit the ground running. And if you're already someone whose nervous system runs hot or whose brain needs more time to shift gears, the start of a semester can feel like being asked to sprint while you are still tying your shoes. So here's the NACHOS approach to semester beginnings. We don't chase perfection. We build stability. We choose a few small habits that protect your sanity and your health, and we treat self-care like a system, not a mood or a vibe. Start with the basics that keep you regulated. Sleep and hydration are not inspirational or cool, but they're powerful. Try to pick consistent wake-up times on weekdays. Not perfect, just consistent enough. Keep water where you can see it and use it. Eat something with actual substance before you stack your brain with tasks. Now, if you struggle with appetite or timing, aim for something rather than nothing and let that count. Next, build a simple map of your week. The fastest path to burnout is keeping your entire schedule in your head. So put your class times, your work shifts, and major deadlines in one place on one page or in one book. Then add buffer. Literally schedule transition time because your brain is not a teleportation device. Give yourself 10 minutes between things when you can. If you cannot, at least name the truth. This is a tight day. Naming it reduces the shame that you feel when you're not allowed to take a deserved break. Because again, you deserve a break sometimes simply by existing in the space. Then choose one small self-care practice that is small enough to actually happen. Not in fantasy, not in some other world, but in this life. Think about it. 5 minutes of quiet in your car before you go inside. A short walk around the building. Noise-canceling headphones between classes. A reset playlist that tells your nervous system, we are safe, we are here, we can do the next thing. Self-care doesn't have to be expensive or aesthetic. It only has to be doable. Now again, it only has to be doable. And doable for whom? For you. Finally, I want you to remember the most important rule for the first 2 weeks. Do not isolate with confusion. If you do not understand an assignment, if you're overwhelmed by the learning platform, if you're already behind because your brain is still returning from break, reach out early. If it's not my class and someone else's class, please reach out to them. Ask a question, send the email, go to office hours, use the tutoring center. Use accommodations if you have them. And if you think you might need support, start the accommodation process now. Getting help is not a character flaw. It is a skill, and it is one of the most mature things that you can do. So with this foundation in place, Let's shift from the how to stay human part of the conversation to the what are we actually doing in this class part of the conversation. In a moment, I'm going to walk you through what this semester is going to look like, how the class is structured, what I want you to focus on first, and how to set yourself up for a steady rhythm instead of a panicked sprint. Think of this as your friendly map for the weeks ahead so that you can spend less energy guessing and more energy learning. Okay, Nacho Knots, here we go, the review for the semester. But before, let me connect this to humanities as a whole, right? Because humanities, a lot of people have weird thoughts about it, but it's not just old books or random culture facts. Humanities is a study of how humans make meaning. It's how we tell stories about who we are, what we value, what we fear, what we hope for, and how we learn to live with one another. And that means the way we run this class matters. The structure is not just logistics. The structure is part of the lesson. We're practicing how to navigate information, build habits, communicate clearly, and participate in a community of thinkers. And that's more than just getting a grade. So again, welcome to the class. And if you're here, you probably know I don't use Moodle. I don't use the online platform. I use Google Classroom and YouTube. And so the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support is part of that work. This is the lecture section of the class, if you will. But it's not really a lecture. And that's intentional. And it's public. And that's intentional because we are learning in the places where modern public life actually happens. And we're practicing thoughtful participation instead of passive scrolling. Your first required step in the class is fairly simple. There's a participation form on Google Classroom. That's going to match up your name on here with your name as I know it officially. And that is the never attended requirement. You need to get onto Google Classroom, fill out that form. Once that form's done, I know you've attended. I know you are here, and we can check off all the lists for all the federal governments and state governments and all of those other things. But that will connect that name on the roster to the email that you're using. So in humanities terms, this is the first step. This is the first act of showing up, not as a perfect student, but simply a present one. And then what about the weekly rhythm? Because rhythm protects your sanity, and I hold that dear. So new course videos like this one are posted on Mondays at 9 p.m. on our course YouTube channel. There are other places you can catch me on Twitch, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. I even put the podcast on Apple Podcast and Spotify that you can listen to. But each week, you're going to answer a weekly question by commenting wherever you listen. Not in the Google Classroom, but here on social media. Your response is due by Thursday at 11:59 p.m. So whenever you can get in here between Monday night at 9 and Thursday night at 11:59 Eastern, all right, and make your comment. So make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, that you turn on notifications, and that the bell icon is clicked so that you don't miss a weekly Nachos video or participation question. This is not busy work. In humanities, we learn by responding, by communicating, by talking. We learn by taking ideas seriously enough to put our own words next to them, like a flag. Now, where do you start when you get into the Google Classroom? Before you do anything else, after you fill out that participation form, check out the classwork tab at the top of the page and review some of the resources there. In particular, the course materials and the Intro to Humanities and Intro to Google Classroom tabs. They have walkthroughs of how the course works, how to find information quickly and how to stay on track, even how to check your grades, upload to Google Classroom, etc. Humanities is partly about learning how to read systems and how to navigate complexity. And that is a gentle place to practice that skill. For grades and feedback, everything's posted on Google Classroom. You can view your grades anytime once they are posted by clicking on those grades tabs. Final grades will be uploaded on the college website by the college deadline at the end of the semester. But Google Classroom is our hub. It's where you'll see the story of your progress as it unfolds. For questions and communication, it's a clear kind of community expectation. For those questions that are not public, right, you definitely want to email me. However, I would ask of you to engage with the community. Ask the community the question, right? You can always tag me, right, on social media so that I will see it in particularly, but I guarantee your classmates, right, also have the answers. This is about modeling sustainable work, right? This is about stepping away and being able to come back and respecting rest. In other words, it's humanities in action. We're going to build a culture where learning and health coexist. So again, those straightforward next steps. Complete the participation form in Google Classroom. Subscribe to this channel, okay? Go to the classwork section, classwork tab section, play around, read the stuff, take a look at the course materials. But as you do these next steps, remember the deeper point. Humanities begins when you decide to be a participant in meaning making, not just a recipient of information or entertainment. This semester, we are going to practice that together. One way you will see this is very clearly in our two projects. There's a midterm and a final beyond our participation. These are not gotcha tests. They're invitations to do humanities work in the real world, to notice values, decode culture, and design something that teaches a message about the kind of world we want to live in. For the midterm, you're going to be creating a holiday or festival. I'm dead serious. We will study how holidays carry cultural assumptions and societal values in their rituals, traditions, and symbols, and even in the food. Your job is going to be to reverse engineer a holiday based upon the values you hope society will learn. What do you want your holiday to promote or protect? What symbols or artifacts express those values? What assumptions about humanity does it celebrate? What harmful values might it subvert? And then you're going to be looking at how this would fit into the larger community, state, or even country that we're a part of. And with all projects in this class, you're going to have two ways of submitting it. You can either submit it as a video or as an essay. But either way, you're doing humanities. You are showing your understanding of how culture teaches people what to believe and how they come to believe it. For the final project, you're going to take that same meaning-making skill and aim it at the real world to make it better. The project is called Reimagining Accessibility Through Micro-Accommodations, and you're going to be identifying an everyday place or system where inclusion is limited. You're going to analyze briefly the barrier and then propose a simple, cost-effective micro-accommodation that makes a meaningful difference. And just like the midterm, you will get to choose how you submit it. A 1,500 to 3,000 word essay or a 3 to 5 minute video. If you want to create a video, you're also going to have a chance to post it publicly. But you can post your writing publicly too. We're now back in a world of public writing. We have Substack and all these other fabulous things. Send it to me. Either way, you're going to be doing this humanities work. You're going to be noticing whose needs are being centered, whose needs are being ignored, and what small changes could be a community make to make everyone feel safer and more included. Studying the humanities matters because it helps you become a person who can think, not just a person who can repeat. It teaches you how to ask better questions, how to notice what is shaping your beliefs, and how to separate this is true from this is popular, or even worse, this is loud. In a world where information is everywhere and attention is constantly being purchased, humanities is one of those few places that trains your mind to slow down, to evaluate, and to choose what you want to stand for. Humanities also gives you tools for being human with other humans. You study stories, history, philosophy, art, and culture, not because the past is a museum, but because people keep repeating the same fears and hopes, just in different costumes. Humanities helps you recognize the patterns and see beyond the outfits, how power works, how prejudice gets normalized, how communities heal, how language can liberate or harm, how a society decides who counts and who doesn't. When you can see those patterns, you stop being as easily manipulated by slogans and you become more capable of empathy that has real backbone. And let's make it practical. Every job, every relationship, every team you will ever be a part of runs on communication, interpretation, and values. Humanities strengthens the skills employers constantly say that they want: critical thinking, writing skills, collaboration, ethical reasoning, and cultural literacy. But more importantly, it strengthens the skills you need to keep your own integrity. The ability to speak clearly, to listen well, to make a case, and to revise your view when you learn something new. And to stay curious instead of defensive. Finally, humanities is a kind of self-defense for your inner life. It protects you from becoming only a worker, only a consumer, only a bundle of tasks. It reminds you that your life is more than output. It gives you language for experiences, especially the ones that are hard to explain, but it helps you name what you value, what you refuse, and what kind of world you want to help build. And in that sense, humanities is not extra, it's foundational. It's how we learn to be more fully awake in our own lives. And that's where NACHOS comes in, and that's why we use it as a part of this course. The Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for Outreach and Support is where we practice humanities out loud. Each week, we take a big human question and we explore it through real examples, not abstract ideas. And that means one week we might be talking about science and discovery, archaeology, ancient civilizations, or the ethics of how we tell stories about the past. Another week, we might be talking about fast food, advertising, social media, memes, movies, music, and the everyday pop culture stuff that shapes what people think is normal now. Humanities is not separate from life. It's the study of life, and the serious and the silly often teach the same lesson about values, power, belonging, and meaning. And we're here to study that. And the weekly structure matters just as much as the content. In an online class, it's easy to feel untethered, like you're floating in a sea of tabs and deadlines. Weekly check-ins create a steady anchor point. When you know that a new video arrives at the same time each week, 9 p.m. Eastern, and you know what you're expected to do with it, answer the question by Thursday, your brain doesn't have to keep reinventing the plan. The predictability lowers stress, especially for students whose nervous systems run hot or they struggle with executive functioning. It turns the course into something you can trust, not something that you have to fear. And that's why we keep the simple rhythm. You show up each week, you watch, you respond, you practice putting your own words next to the material, and over time, those small weekly moments add up. They build consistency. And consistency builds confidence. And even in a fully online class, that kind of dependable cadence can create a sense of community because we are all returning to the same conversation again and again. And that's how learning becomes sustainable. And it's how you keep your sanity while still doing meaningful work. And that's what we're here for. Meaningful work, not busy work, not performative stress, not grades for grades' sake, not proving you can suffer. Meaningful work is the kind that actually changes you because it helps you understand yourself and the world more clearly. It builds skills you can use outside this class. It gives you language for what you have lived through. It helps you practice curiosity, courage, and care. That's also where PB&J, the predictability, balance, and joy I mentioned before, comes in. PB&J is not a cute slogan or some paywall freaking program. It's a framework for designing a life and a learning environment that a real human with a real human brain can actually sustain. Predictability means you should not have to guess how to succeed. That's why we have a weekly rhythm, consistency with due dates, clear instructions, and a single home base in Google Classroom. Predictability reduces anxiety and decision fatigue. It frees up brain space for learning instead of constantly scanning for surprises. You'll also know where to look, what to do next, and what done looks like. Balance means we take the whole person seriously. You're not a homework machine. You're a student with a nervous system, responsibilities, relationships, and limits. Balance shows up in how we pace the work, how we build routines that prevent last-minute spirals, and how we talk about time management as a form of self-respect. It also shows up in how I encourage you to plan for recovery, not just productivity. If you only schedule effort and you never schedule rest, burnout is not a mystery. It is simple math. And joy means we do not treat learning as punishment. Joy does not mean, though, everything is easy. It means there's meaning, there's curiosity, and a sense of aliveness in what we do. Joy is the moment when something clicks. Joy is when you see a connection between an ancient artifact and a modern headline. Joy is when you realize your thoughts matter and you can actually shape a conversation. Joy is also play and wonder and the permission to be interested. In this class, joy is not optional. It's part of the design. I want you to tap into what you find joyful and connect it to this class. So PB&J is woven into the course on purpose. The structure supports you, the rhythm steadies you, and the content invites you. And the goal is that you finish this semester not just with a grade, but with a stronger sense of how to learn, how to think, and how to take care of the person doing the learning. And when a course is designed that way, something shifts. Learning stops being a performance and starts becoming a practice. You're not trying to win school by sheer force. You're building a rhythm. And you're building this rhythm that your real life can hold. And that's going to be scary for some of you. You've learned the performance. You know how to walk the rope. And I'm telling you, no more rope. But you're learning also how to plan, how to ask for help, how to recover after a hard week, and how to stay connected to meaning even when you are tired. That's why PB&J matters. It's not about lowering standards. It's about creating conditions where you can actually meet them without losing yourself in the process. Which brings me to a truth a lot of students need to hear at the start of the semester. Your success is not always a direct measure of intelligence or grit. Sometimes it's both. You can be smart and persistent and still struggle if the system is chaotic, if your nervous system is overloaded, if you're juggling work, family, health, or grief. And sometimes it's neither. Sometimes success shows up because you had structure, support, clear instructions, and enough rest to think straight. In other words, outcomes are often about design and resources, not just willpower. And if outcomes are often about design and resources, not just willpower, then one of the most important student skills is not to try harder. It's to notice sooner. Notice when you're drifting. Notice when your body is signaling overload. Notice when you're confused and you're pretending not to be confused. Notice when you are doing that thing where you keep refreshing the page instead of starting the assignment, because your nervous system is treating the task like a threat. That is where asking for help comes in, not as a last resort and not as a confession, as a normal part of being a human and a human learner. Help is not only for people who are failing. Help is for people who want to stay steady. Help is for people who understand that brains work better with support, clarity, and connection. And asking for help is not just emailing the professor. It can be posting a question in the assignment section. It can be posting a question in the comments. It can be going to tutoring. It can be using office hours, talking to a counselor. It could be reaching out to a classmate and saying, hey, do you understand what we're doing here? Because I sure as hell don't. It could be using your accommodations if you have them, or starting the process if you suspect you might need them. The point is simple, and I will repeat it again. Isolation multiplies stress. Connection reduces it. The other side of this is knowing your limits and boundaries. Limits are not personal weaknesses. Limits are real information about what your life can hold. If you can work 30 hours a week, you cannot pretend you have the same bandwidth as someone who does not work 30 hours a week. If you're caring for family, if you have chronic health issues, if you're managing anxiety, if you're carrying grief, your time and energy budget is different from others. Boundaries are how you respect that budget. They're how you protect sleep, how you protect meals, how you protect recovery, how you protect attention. They are how you prevent school from swallowing your life whole, and it will try to. So as we start the semester, I want you to practice a new kind of strength. The kind of strength to be honest early with yourself and others. The strength to ask for help before you are in crisis. The strength to say, I can do this much I can do this much consistently. Instead of, I can do everything all the time for 3 days and then collapse. We want sustainable. That's PB&J in real life. Predictability, balance, and joy. They're not just class themes. They're how you build a semester that does not cost you your health or your student career. And one of the simplest ways we build that kind of semester is by checking in on purpose every week, not to perform, not to impress, just to stay connected to yourself, to the class, and to the real reasons we're here. A weekly question is a small anchor. It gives us continuity. It gives your brain a familiar step in the rhythm. It gives you a moment to name what you need and what you are aiming towards. So Nacho Knots, here is the weekly check-in question, and I want you to take it seriously, but not heavily. Hope is not always a fireworks feeling. Sometimes it's a tiny pilot light. Sometimes it's a sentence you are almost afraid to say out loud because you've been disappointed before. And sometimes in the world we're living in, hope feels like it is in short supply or stupid to even want. So I want you to do this in the comments. Tell me one hope you are carrying into this new semester or this new year. Keep it honest, keep it human. It can be big or small. It can be academic, personal, relational, health related, or just a quiet hope like, I want to feel like myself again. Then add one more piece. Name one small thing that could protect that hope this week. A boundary, a habit, a support that you will ask for. I want to feel like myself again. Therefore, I'm going to spend 5 minutes in the car before I walk into the house. This is a tiny act of care, something realistic, something you can actually do in your real life. And if you can do none of that and you're going, okay, I have no hope for my personal self and have no small way I can do this, then what's one thing you hope or would like to be true by April? Even if you're not sure how to get there yet, what is one goal for April? So again, tap into that hope in one small way that you can keep it alive like a pilot light, or set your goal for April. So all right, Nacho Knots, before we head out for today, I want to zoom back out. I want to hold the whole arc of this episode in our hands for a minute. And we're going to hold it the way that we would hold a warm mug when you're coming back in from the cold. So as we come back today, I want to remind you that this is a reset. It's a reminder that returning from winter break is a transition, and transitions take energy. If you feel foggy, if you feel tender or out of rhythm, you are not behind. You are re-entering, and we can say that plainly, that rest is not laziness. Rest is maintenance. Rest is care. And although some of you rested, some of you merely survived a break that was messy or heavy. So either way, congratulate yourselves that you are still here, and you are still worthy simply because you are here. We also named a truth that sits at the heart of Nachos. Darkness, especially the darkness of winter or the darkness of our hearts, is not a verdict. Hard seasons do not erase your value. Burnout does not mean you are weak. Grief does not mean you are failing. Sometimes the darkness is just the body trying to keep you alive. And the clearer sun, when it comes, often comes through honesty, rest, and redesign, not through self-punishment. Then we made it practical. We talked about the start of the semester and what it takes to keep your sanity. The basics that do not get enough respect: sleep, hydration, nourishment. The simple map of your week so that you are not carrying everything in your head. The small self-care practices that can actually happen in a real life. And we made one of the most important commitments of the whole course and possibly the whole semester and maybe your entire student career. Do not isolate with confusion. Ask early, reach out. Let support be normal. We also walked through what we're doing this semester in Humanities 101 in our course, not just as logistics, but as a humanities lesson itself. We are here to become participants in meaning making. We are here to practice reading culture, decode values, and learning how to think in a world that profits from your distraction. And we will practice that. We talked about the rhythm of NACHOS, the weekly check-ins that create predictability, the 2 big projects that let you build something real, right? That midterm where you design a holiday that teaches values, and the final where you reimagine accessibility through micro accommodations that make everyday life a little bit more accessible. And we named PB&J as the thread running through all of it. Predictability so that you do not have to guess how to succeed. Balance so that your work can fit inside of a real human life. And joy so that learning does not become punishment. Joy is meaning. Joy is curiosity. Joy is the moment something clicks and you realize your mind and your thoughts matter. Then we told the truth about success. Sometimes it's intelligence and grit, and sometimes it is neither of those things. Often it is design, resources, rest, and support. That is why we practice the language of limits and boundaries. That is why we practice the skill of noticing sooner. That is why we practice asking for help as something wise, not something shameful. And then we closed with hope. Not loud hope, not performative hope, the pilot light kind of hope. The kind you protect with one small action. So here are the affirmations I want to leave you with this week, Nacho Knots. Take what fits and leave the rest. You are allowed to return slowly. You are allowed to need support. You are not behind. You are re-entering. You do not have to earn rest by suffering first. Your limits are not failures. They are information and data. Asking for help is a strength skill, not a confession of weakness. This semester can be steady. It can be meaningful. It can be doable. And you belong here, even on the weeks you do not feel your best. So if you're in the comments, answer the weekly question. Name one hope you are carrying and one small thing that you could do to protect it this week. And if you're not ready for hope, give me that goal for April. That's enough to start. And remember, you are enough just being here, Nacho Knots. So I welcome you back, and let's have an awesome season 4 of Nachos. And I'll see you next week here, 9 p.m. Have a great week.